The presidency yesterday disclosed that neither the federal government nor the central bank has taken a preemptive position on the legality of the old 200, 500 naira, 1,000 naira notes in view of the case pending before the Supreme Court, which comes up for hearing today. In a statement by spokesperson Malam Galbasho, the presidency said the federal government's position on the currency swap will be made public after the termination of the suit. The statement said, following a series of inquiries, we wish to state that it is not true that the federal government or the CBN has taken a preemptive action on the legality of the currency as a legal tender in view of the pending case before the Supreme Court. However, the Central Bank Governor Godwin Emefiele says calls for the extension of the deadline for the circulation of old naira notes are unnecessary. Emefiele met with diplomatic community in Abuja on banks' monetary and currency design policy. He says the problem of the naira scarcity is gradually easing off. He acknowledged the suffering of Nigerians and said the effective implementation of policy could scrap 4% off the inflation numbers. POS agents who charge above 200 naira as commission for the cash swap will be arrested and jailed.
There is tremendous tension and elevated agitation by our leaders who should be calming frayed nerves by the citizens. We believe that a large proportion of these agitations are staged, they are sponsored propaganda, or an exaggeration of the reality. No doubt, there are pockets of pressures in some areas. The CBN is working hard to shift pressure, to shift resources to those areas in order to ease the tension. The situation is substantially calming down since the commencement of the over-the-counter payments to complement ATM disbursements and the use of super agents. There is therefore no need to consider any shift from the deadline of February the 10th. POS agents that we thought should help us also deepen financial inclusion, are getting involved in this kind of unfortunate, unscrupulous activities. And we have told the EFCC, the ICPC, working with our CBN monitoring team, to arrest any POS agent that charges any fee, because we had made it clear that whatever is their fee, which is not meant to be more than 200 naira for any amount you exchange, that we, Central Bank, we will pay as part of the cost to lessen the burden of this problem. And let me make it clear, and I'm sure the press is listening to me, we started to arrest them. We will prosecute them, and they will go to jail for getting involved in illegal activity and making our work difficult.
Right, a lot to talk about, Ayo.
Yes, this is a very important clarification. I thought it was really important because yesterday there was a bit of a conundrum as to what is really going on. Is the deadline still on course, or is the federal government and the CBN going to obey the Supreme Court's ruling exactly a week ago, the 8th of February 2023? Indeed, we actually talked about it yesterday. Dr. Bati mentioned the fact that some institutions had started to reject old notes, and they were telling people who brought in old notes that they were not going to accept this. And so people were quite confused. In fact, I was listening to a chat this morning where people in the makeup room were talking about the fact that they had challenges even with vendors. Even with vendors, refusing to collect. I'd shared my experience in some stores, even as of yesterday, putting out notices that we do not collect old notes anymore. The airport, international airport, right as you're driving in, they're telling you we're not collecting old notes. So these clarification was very important to happen. So the federal government has now come out to state that they are not going to be preemptive. They will wait for the ruling of the Supreme Court today, which is stated for today, and whatever the Supreme Court says, they will obey. However, beyond this was also that conversation before the diplomatic call by the CBN governor himself. In terms of speaking directly to the ruling, wisely perhaps he hasn't said anything, but has spoken about some of the challenges that they have faced in terms of the circulation of the naira notes. Nigerians are suffering. The queues are still there across the country, not just in Lagos or commercial, cities like Abuja, Lagos, Kano, Kaduna, but even in rural areas, in the hinterlands, people in the markets, people with small businesses are complaining about the fact that there's scarcity of notes. Yet, some political figures, whom some CSOs have called the G10, 10 governors have been said to be mopping up the cash in circulation, so that the people who are most in need of this cash are being deprived because there's some saboteurs in high places. These are the conversations that Nigerians need to begin to have and ask questions. Who are these political figures who are taking in cash, buying cash from the bank, speaking to banking agents to get this money to be able to induce voters in the coming election. Who are these bank officials who are enabling this act by actually selling these notes to them and depriving the man on the streets from having access to his money and frustrating the efforts of the CBN to effect a money policy that they have evaluated as being for the good of Nigerians and for the banking system as a whole? These are questions and conversations we must have. I'm looking forward to the ruling of the Supreme Court, but we must pay very close attention to what the CBN has assured. There's no need for a deadline. Things can work if people are ready to make it work.
Dr. Watu?
Okay, there's no doubt that the policy and the execution of this Naira design policy has caused a lot of disruption. Small businesses have complained, farmers have complained, politicians have complained. And the major issue is that these new notes are not available. The banks are not making the notes available. People cannot have access to the new notes. And then they are faced with this deadline that the CBN announced. It's so bad that, in fact, in one instance, we were told that a family rejected the money brought by a suitor as bride price because it was presented in old notes. The money was returned. If you want our daughter, you bring new notes. Yesterday, in Akure, protesters went to the premises of the central bank and took over the place. It had to take the deployment of security agencies to maintain the peace. In Benin, the premises, the headquarters of the CBN in Benin, Edo State, was set ablaze last week. In Abeokuta last week, there was a protest. Yesterday, people also took over the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, blocked both sides of the road along that Lagos-Ibadan Expressway leading towards Songwater. So it's causing a lot of agitation. It therefore makes sense that the CBN governor took it upon himself to address the diplomatic corps at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Nigeria, because the international community, in the lead up to the elections, they're already beginning to talk about, the Naira scarcity in Nigeria, the fuel scarcity in Nigeria could affect the elections. So what the CBN governor did, that is in order, is to carry along the international community and to tell them what the issues are. Those issues we've repeated ad nauseum, and he himself has done the same, in trying to explain the policy and the fallouts and the effect and the importance to the general public. However, I took notice of one thing that he said yesterday. One, that politicians are behind this scarcity, that they are mopping up the currency notes. Okay, why is it that the Nigerian government has not arrested any of these politicians, if they are known? Because the CBN is working with the EFCC, the ICPC. By now, some of these politicians should have been named and shamed. Two, the CBN governor also pointed out that miscreants, it's not just ordinary people, that you see at those ATM machines, that miscreants take over to take advantage. They help to secure positions on the queue. Okay, the banks themselves, what are they doing to make sure that their premises are not taken over by miscreants? Number three, the POS retailers, the POS operators, okay, they are making a premium. That's the way it is in Nigeria. Anytime there is a policy, Nigerians try to beat it, some people try to profit from it. I think there should be consequential action beyond the CBN governor just saying they will be arrested and jailed. When we begin to see consequential action in these respects, we will understand. But there are other important issues. You refer to the statement issued by Garuba Shehu, saying that the president, the government will comply and will only take a decision after the CBN that is hearing the matter of AG Kaduna and two others. Others still want to join, versus AG Federation with regard to the Naira design policy. The CBN had granted an ex parte motion, an injunction, saying that the February 10 deadline cannot stand and that the old notes should still be in circulation. But a strange thing happened yesterday, the same day, when the CBN governor now said the deadline has passed. That looked like it was in open defiance of the Supreme Court. And that would set a bad precedent, because the CBN cannot overrule the Supreme Court of Nigeria. The Supreme Court's powers to be for its orders to be obeyed are properly spelled out in the Constitution. Section 232, Section 257. And as Femi Falana, SAN, has argued extensively, also yesterday, the CBN cannot claim that it's an independent body under Section 2B, because Falana argues that there are decided cases, Obevere versus CBN, per Rosebible, GSC as it then was, and also Fayoshe versus EFCC, versus EFCC, per Dongman Mensam, JCA as she then was. Now she's president of the Court of Appeal, to say that that independence that is talked about is a lame link, because the CBN is an agent of the government. But whatever it is, you cannot overrule the Supreme Court of Nigeria. So I see the statement by Garuba Shehu. I have not checked which one comes in terms of the order. I see it as an attempt to do damage control, because the CBN cannot overrule the Supreme Court. However, the matter will be heard today, and whatever the Supreme Court decides, the Supreme Court can extend this order, it can take the matter, and what everybody will remember is that the Federal Government Act said that it will respect the order of court, and that is what is important in this matter. There are CSOs, civil society organizations, 472 of them, who came out yesterday and protested against politicians. I still repeat, those problematic politicians causing the problem should be identified. They are not from Mars. They are here, and they are going to be part of this election.
I said yesterday, a nation that values privilege over virtue and purpose will soon lose both. Nigeria has become that nation, classical case. It is always about the privilege of the big man, and that's why they can connive with banks, get money for their own interest, political interest. I also say all of this is happening because politicians are mopping up cash, and the system has been so corrupt that people can get their way. We hear all sorts of methods, as much as some politicians transferring 140 million naira to be able to get 100 million cash. New notes. Now that the POS operators are having a field day, they too are not talking any longer. But I'm happy the CBN governor said it's illegal. There's a court order on ground. Let us respect it. It is our Supreme Court. Because if we violate our Supreme Court order, then we are opening the floodgates of anarchy in our country. But we all remember how this started. And that's why our politicians should truly put their word or their money where their mouth is and show they care for the people and stop all these shenanigans they are doing against the people. A Naira policy was announced last year. Couple of months after the Naira policy was announced, at first they said the CBN governor was charged for terrorism, should be charged for terrorism. Secondly, we know how that went. We know how they tried to arrest him. We know what went on. These same governors exhausted everything possible. They went to meet the president. They got the first extension. When they see the first extension was about to wrap, what did they do? They went to the courts. They reneged against and this was after they went to meet the president, but the president said, give me 7 days. So they disrespected the man because they wanted to get their way. So they got their way with the courts. Now they've had many join the suits. We'll see what the Supreme Court will rule. We need to respect the rule of law. But the politicians should remember that they are no gods. And Dr. Abati, the answer to your question, in this country where we have amplified politicians so much that they trump the order of things, if any key politician is named, wouldn't his surrogate say it's a political witch hunt? We all see the case of some that are even going to address certain security agencies. How some people have spun that story based on what they said. A nation that values privilege over purpose and virtue will soon lose both. Nigeria is losing it, and we must stand tall for this nation.